lowest end would be to do it for a discounted price or even free, just to get started, to get the testimonial.
For example, when somebody says like 50% upfront, 50% on completion, there might be other ways of doing that. 20%, maybe 30% on completion, and then after a few months of proving the ROI, I get the other 50%. Yeah. If you're talking about equity and a directorship, then really what you're talking about is vesting, dilution, things like liquidation, and good lever, bad lever type thing.
So yeah, I was talking to Simon the other day, and one of the topics that I thought might be interesting for my community is the topic of what to do if you're a business owner and you want development, but you're a bit budget strapped, or maybe you are interested in AI development, but you're not fully committed yet, and you're not fully convinced because you've heard the stats about all of enterprise level AI and tech projects failing. Although for small businesses, a lot of AI projects are actually very successful. That is out there in the ether. So we thought we'd talk about some different options that business owners could use for helping to get development. And it's also good for developers, because if developers are starting out and they do have a warm lead, and that business owner might not be fully convinced to give them a big budget right off the bat, or maybe they're a small business and they're interested but they can't afford full development, there are some options. So I thought that could be like the topic of this chat, and then I'll try and make some YouTube videos out of it as I do. So nice. Simon, you're the main man. Would you like to give your introduction, your company, and anything else you want to say?
I am Simon Filtness. I have a company that is the AI dev agency. So we are all about doing the development for other agencies and also for small businesses. Not big on doing the client acquisition. I'm much more interested in doing just the development. We are exclusively using Claude Code, and have done so pretty successfully with the people that I've been engaging with so far. The whole thing that kicked it off is that I'm in discussion with one of my clients to become a director of one of her businesses. So it's really kind of looking at what the options is, what I've been doing over the last sort of few months, or a couple of months, I should say. Just kind of figuring out what options there are, whether it's the right thing to do, whether it's not the right thing to do, what are the implications for me as a developer, and an agency owner. What does it change from my point of view, and what does it change for her, and what's the best way to go about it?
So that's one to start off with. So it's about taking a little bit of equity into the company. So that's...
Yeah, so the discussion there really was around, do I become a director and have equity in the company, or do I effectively work on a retainer employee type basis? And that really is a partial. That would be a partial. So how much time do I spend? Do I spend 50% of the time there? How does that work? So I've got other options as well that we can discuss. So I've got, what is it? 9
options. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'd like to come back to the one you just said, because that's going to require a lot of negotiation, because there's a lot of negotiation around how much time, how much equity. I understand what you're saying there. It's like a lot of employees, when they're employed by a company, will take some shares and equity in the business as well. So I guess it's kind of a little bit like that model, but then it's how much.
Well, there's 2 options from that, isn't there? So you can, as an employer, you could take share options. That's not necessarily the same as ownership. True. So there's a slight difference that you've got to think about there. Usually, depending on how somebody set it up, there'll be a proportion of the shares in the company that are marked as option based, and an employee will get an amount out of that that set. So that's a way of the company actually sharing some options with them. But if you're talking about equity and a directorship, then really what you're talking about is the things that you need to think about are percentage, vesting, dilution, things like liquidation, and good lever, bad lever type things. So there's a kind of there's things that you need to negotiate up front to make sure that you're covering everything. Voting, control, all of that type of thing. Do you lose control of it, or do you keep control of it? Who's the decision maker? And also both parties need to think about like the tax implications as well, because obviously there are tax implications for the individual taking the directorship, and there could be tax implications for the company. So
directorship responsibilities as well. It's not a small task, is it? It's a whole ball game getting involved with legally as a director inside of a company.
Yeah. But it does depend on control, and board composition as well. So there's a lot of things to consider. There's where you incorporate it. There's which jurisdiction you are laws you are abiding by. So you can, just because you do it in, say, the US or something like that, you could actually use UK law. So there's a lot of decisions and things that you need to take into consideration when you're doing this. So in this particular case with this client, this company doesn't exist. So we'd be creating a company, albeit under her umbrella company. So it would be connected to her sort of portfolio of companies.
Right.
But at the moment, this company doesn't exist. So it'd be creating a new company, and then be being a director of that. And it's a lot of the questions at the moment is talking about, like, why are we doing it and what are we doing it for? And part of it is protection. There's IP questions that you need to consider, and also she's looking to engage with investors as well. So it's, are we the right people to do that? Is this the right time to do that? Actually, we've decided that it's not the right time to do that, and deferred that probably 6 months to a year's time. So we're kind of going to carry on the way we are at the moment, which is actually kind of more a retainer model at the moment, to get to a point where we can validate what we're actually providing, and make sure that it's making a difference to the business and to other clients, because we're looking to kind of push it into other clients, not just her businesses, and then look to incorporate a business, and then look to take that to investors with the thing behind us that, like, this is what we've achieved, and this is what we want to do next.
I've got a few thoughts on this. One of them is, how quickly can this be set up? But before you answer that, the other thing I'm thinking is, I understand creating a company for this arrangement, which protects the business owner and her larger company, but then that means there's a lot of faith on you as a developer to get him to do the work, essentially starting up this company with them. And I guess that's only going to work with a certain type of development. So you're basically creating a whole new business from scratch. So again, there's a lot of faith in that. So my two questions there are really, there's a lot of work, a lot of responsibility. How quickly can that be set up, and how much actual effort is it from you as a developer to get into that arrangement? And secondly, do you have an idea on, like, is it really only works for, how do you know that it's going to be worth your time and that it's going to work out, basically? Which is $1 million question, isn't it?
I mean, and it's questions, I mean, one of the things that talked about mistakes, and that is not doing due diligence, both sides. I'm fairly confident that in her as a business owner. She's been in business successful for the last 10 years. So I'm fairly confident in her in this, although it is kind of a new area that she's going into. So, that's part of the thing about, why her, why me? Neither of us have got experience in that. So from an investment point of view, I feel like at the moment it's a risky proposition. But we can make it work. And if you think about it kind of in a year's time, it could be a completely different story. We could have had, we've implemented it into a salons. It's a salon business, and we've implemented it into a salons. We've got evidence from a franchise point of view. We've gone into some other salons, got some results there. If we can prove, right, okay, we've moved the figures from here to here, then, with what we've done, and now we want to kind of expand the operation that we're doing, we need investment, then it's a whole different thing. It's a whole different discussion. So in terms of how much work it is for me, I've been working with her for 4 months. We've started a new venture in the last month. I've made extremely good progress for the initial part, so much so that she wants to cement the relationship, as it were. The whole thing is going to be between 3 and 6 months, maybe even 9 months effort. So it's a considerable amount of effort, and I say 3 months because it's probably going to be 3 months that we get it into a salon. Then what we need to do is benchmark and see what it does with the figures. And then depending on how that works, then we move forward with what we need to do from there on. That's where I am in terms of actually setting up the agreement. I think that in the early discussions, we talked about one of the mistakes. We covered kind of a lot of things. We've agreed upon a lot of things already. So one of the things we talked about is, if we're going to do that, at the moment we've got a very informal agreement. I'm just working and she's paying me for what I'm doing, kind of thing. But if we're going to do this, we need to take it to a new level and actually get some contracts in place, and there's some kind of written agreement, and there's also like legal review. Both parties, I think it's important to have legal review of things. IP ownership is a question mark as well. If you haven't kind of agreed what the whose intellectual property it is, there can be question marks. So if you're going forward and you're getting investment at a later date, if the IP is unclear, that's going to be a red flag to the investors. So you need to make sure that it's clear and clean cut. Whose IP is it? Who's got the IP? Obviously, I've already said about tax implications. From the business's point of view, from an equity point of view, you don't want to give away too much equity too quickly in the life of your business. Typically you want to kind of look at maybe only 20% maximum. If they're talking about more than 20%, then that might be a no-go. But you're typically looking at maybe 3 to 5%. You might be talking about, depending on what the business is. I mean, this is quite a bit. This is a fairly IT heavy, technology heavy opportunity, or
I guess
company
part
that
of
we're
that is
going
because
for.
as the business goes from startup to rounds of funding, and you kind of want to give out more equity, and the more equity you're giving out, the more it dilutes the shares.
Yes.
So you want to really keep that as. This where the negotiation comes in, I guess, but the business owner wants to keep that as low as possible. The developer wants to get that as high as possible. Yeah,
and this is where the initial stages of how they organise that. Let's say that you had 4%. I'm choosing 4% because when we talk about vesting, it'll be easier to give the example. But let's say 4%. And what you don't want to do is when you go through multiple rounds of investment, that actually you dilute it down and you end up with like 0.25% or what. So you want to make sure that, are you getting those rounds from the allocation that you've the share allocation that you've option allocation that you've set aside, because then you keep 4%, but you still got somebody investment going into a share going into an investor. So it's really kind of important to kind of understand how the thing's set up, and this is from the business point of view, but also from the developer point of view that I'm talking now. Obviously, being a developer myself. So yeah, it's really important to do that. And then the vesting. Everyone familiar? Should I just give a quick example of vesting?
Sure. Yeah.
So typically, what you'd have with vesting is a 4-year with a 1-year cliff. So let's say if we talk about like 4%, that's why I chose 4%. Just because it's nice and simple.
Yeah.
The 1-year cliff means that if you start and then for the first year, if during the first year it all goes pear-shaped, you're not doing what you said you were doing or whatever, you come out and you have no equity at all. Right? So until that first year is complete, you've got no equity. You've got an agreement for equity, but you haven't got any equity. As soon as the year is up, then you get in this case 4-year, you get a quarter of the equity. So effectively you get 1%. And then each month after that, up to the 4-year, you would get a 48th
right.
of the equity that you've got. So at the end of the second year, you'd have 2%. At the end of the third year, 3%. At the end of the fourth year, you'd have 4%. So it's like a sliding scale depending on how much work you do.
Is that based on your performance? Can they sort of decide to terminate?
Generally,
on your side to terminate?
Generally not. Okay, so another thing to consider is leaver. Coming out of the agreement. What is that? And you've got two sides to that. You've got good leaver and a bad leaver. Generally speaking, I believe a bad leaver. What would you have done if you'd done a bad leaver? So maybe you've done something that's illegal. You've shared something that you should have done. You've caused a crash. You've caused problems in some shape or form. You've done something almost negligent.
Yeah.
In that case, you're probably going to lose the whole of the equity. So you're not going to have any equity at all. You leave. That's it. You've got no say. Good leaver, it would tend to be you tend to be frozen at the point wherever you are. So if you stayed there for 2 years, for example, and then decided, right, okay, it's not for you, you're going to go somewhere else, you probably have 2%.
Yeah.
And then then you've got kind of liquidation considerations. So what happens with a company if what happens if in a company if before the end of that vesting period, for whatever reason the owner wants to sell it. Again, you talk about control and voting. Do you have a say in whether it can be sold? Do you stay in the business? Are you kind of sold with the business, or are you required to stay in the business for a period of time?
Yeah.
It might be as condition of the sale. You need to stay on for a year or whatever. So all of these things, you need to consider what it is that it might involve. But if you've left kind of thing and you've got like 2%, you may or may not have a say in whether it's sold. If it's sold, you just get your money.
That is a lot of awesome information, and it is like obviously. So you said you've got 9 different ways. I've got about 7, and that one is about having a stake in the company, and that is not something to take lightly. And everything that you've outlined there are the reasons why you don't take it lightly, and really, really good, really interesting. You also mentioned, you mentioned a way to do this. You've got 9 different ways. I thought if you mentioned the 9 different ways, I've got 7, and one of them was about IP, which maybe we could touch on. But before we go, what's the 9 things that you've got?
Excellent. So if you think about kind of and the next sort of step down is like revenue share.
Yeah.
But there's various kind of ways of doing that. So you could do you could do royalties. If it's a product, you might say, well, okay, I get X percent of royalties on the sale, but I don't actually own anything. I kind of, it's almost like writing a song and being able to get royalties from it. Maybe you do own it from that point of view, but you get what I mean. There's a slight difference between the way that it
that would be the
works.
simpler version of doing this, wouldn't it? So you do the development, you get the royalties, but the business and everything that's on them.
And then revenue share, the key point there is, is it net or gross? There's a distinct difference between that. Who's taking on a portion of the costs involved in running the business or whatever it might entail, or making sales or whatever it might entail. So then some of the other models are milestone. So, for example, when somebody says like 50% upfront, 50% on completion, there might be other ways of doing that. You might turn around and say, okay, I'm going to, you've not got a lot of money, so I'll do 20%, maybe 30% on completion, and then after a few months of proving the ROI, I get the other 50%. So you just got to agree what the milestones are.
I just want to jump in on that one because that particularly speaks to something that I teach, which is iterative development with Scrum. And one of the approaches is to start off small, but start off on something that can generate some revenue quite quickly. So you take a small low-hanging fruit that you get it. You prove the concepts of AI technology. You make a good relationship with that developer, and you try and get something out that can start either saving time or paying for itself with return on investment quite quickly. Then once it's either saving you money or making you money, then you can start to take that extra money and use it to fund the next bit of iterative development. So that's one of the main things I've got down, and it's one of the main things for my Scrum audience would be, if you think of it as maybe you've got a goal to go from here to here, and it seems like it's a lot of development work and it's going to cost a lot to get there. But if you can work out milestones on the way where you can release iterations that are going to either save or generate money, then you can start to use that to fund the next milestone so you can get from here to the end goal. That's one of the ones I definitely wanted to get in on this.
And then you got a retainer. And really at the moment that's kind of where I'm kind of I'm going between like this sort of deferred payment type thing to a retainer. So at the moment she's paying me a retainer each month, which is enough for me at the moment. I'm keeping a note of how much it's sort of costing, and then kind of at some point we'll kind of roll that into either me becoming a director or just continuing. But the key part here is to try and pare it down. So actually she had quite a big remit that she wanted to do, and actually what we've managed to do in this negotiation really is kind of pare it down to a smaller amount, a quicker return. Get it right, make the numbers move so that we can prove the numbers are moving up front and actually show a return on investment. And then kind of, the rest of it will come.
And you as a developer, you have your rate, but she might not be, the retainer isn't paying your rate, but what it is, it's enough to keep you happy. And you've also got the promise of either equity or revenue or other options basically. That's another option.
So some of the other things that you could do is third party finance. So you could do some kind of loan. They could get some kind of loan to pay you with the proviso obviously that you're going to deliver,
or a grant possibly. If there is, because there's supposed to be a lot of tech grants in different countries to help companies make use of what is the new thing, AI. So it's worth looking for grants.
Yep. The other thing that you can do is, depending on who you're dealing with, you could do bartering. So let's say that you're dealing with as a developer, you're dealing with an accountant, and you need accountancy services.
Okay, yeah.
You can get your accounts done. They can, you can offer them in return. The caveat here is that that the money that you agree is provisioned on both sides, so it's an income that that both of you are getting.
Right.
Although it's offset. So no money is changing hands. It is a service that you're providing for a value, and it's a service they're providing for a value, and
so
cancels
it is
out.
taxable in the end.
It is taxable.
That's the thing.
And the thing is and the reason I say that is it's important to do that, because if something came out that you haven't declared it, then
and you got audited and you looked at that.
You're going to get into all sorts of trouble. The other option that I've got is success fee. So maybe there's little or nothing up front, and obviously the risk here. See, all of these options, you've got risks. You've got risks in terms of, where does the risk sit? Does it sit with the business owner? Does it sit with the developer? And it's just a range of things. If you're pretty confident as a developer that you can deliver, in this case, I'm pretty confident I can deliver.
Just a caveat on that, though, as a developer, you might be confident in delivering what has been requested on the requirements, but whether that is going to actually be the right thing to create and there's a business behind it is a whole different thing.
And one of the other mistakes that I've got is trusting without doing some validation. And that works both ways. Is the developer the right person? Do they actually know what they're talking about? Can they actually deliver? And equally, is the business is something that you're actually going to get paid from? And it's worth it actually. Some of the other things to think about are poor communication, unrealistic expectations either side, and also no dispute clause, resolution clause. Because it's one thing just being agreeable, but if you're entering into a partnership, particularly in the equity sort of, you're becoming a director, you need to make sure that you understand what the dispute mechanism resolution is. If you've got a disagreement between the parties, how are you going to resolve it? And some of the things I did a little test with this is, she's got a really great vision. She's a strong vision, and I did a little bit of a counter argument, and actually, unlike myself, I was a little bit negative on it, just to see how she would react and whether there'd be a problem. And actually, we resolved it really quickly and easily. And it was just a quick discussion. Therefore, I'm confident that if we've got a problem, we'll just be able to talk about it.
So that's less of a formal. There's two things. That was an informal test, wasn't it? But I see your point of making a formal resolution process as well. But it's good to do that short test in the initial stages.
I mean, the thing is that it's, we've only been working with each other for 4 months. So she doesn't really know me. I don't really know her. We have made a good connection. So we do have a good relationship. We've communicated well. I think I've understood her well, and delivered what she wants. So it's really kind of, continuing that and taking it to the next level and and it's not me just kind of going, well, I want 20% of your company or 50% of your company. I actually I've pushed it back to say, actually, is it right now? As I said before, if you're going for investment, we're probably not going to get it right now. We need to prove a few things first in order to actually.
You need to understand how well your working relationship is going to be, and that's absolutely crucial because both of you are taking on risk. And and if you're taking on a lot of risk as a developer, then you need to know. So that's I really like that subtle way of just testing the waters early on, just to see. Yeah, it's good. Great advice.
Did you have any others?
Yeah, I have actually. I've got two
Nice.
two more actually, which are on the lower end. So the lowest end would be to do it for a discounted price or even free, just to get started, to get the testimonial. So that's one way. If you're starting out, sometimes you just have to take the hit. It's good experience for you. It's good experience on the development, and then you can go to other companies or put it on your resume, CV, and say that you did it. So that's one. Another one, which is kind of linked maybe, but you could think about, and this comes back to the IP bit that you mentioned. If you created something that solves a problem for that business, then do you own the IP to then white label that and roll that out to other businesses? So you might want to do it for free or a discounted rate if you think that the idea is there's a lot of profit in it, if you're able to either sell it to other businesses in that niche, or if you're able to make a SaaS product out of it. But then you need to make sure that you've got your IP understanding and everything like that covered. But if a developer wants something built, maybe you could say that you would build it for them on a retainer or a cut fee, but you get to replicate that solution elsewhere. And then there might be arrangements about they don't go to the direct competitors, but they might go to a different country or different type of market or something like that. So that's another.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen that work with some other businesses, in a vertical where you're negotiating with somebody. You've got to think that exclusivity is worth something. I mean, the money models is a thing that I've thought about from that point of view. The exclusivity, there is a value to that, and you can't underestimate. Okay, maybe is it something that is actually worth something on the market, and developing it and testing it in a business, there is a value to that.
Yes, there is.
You almost, you kind of get a win-win. The company that you're dealing with gets a product for little or no money. You get a testimonial to I think there's always a difference between what you think about something and reality. Hitting going into a company and actually seeing how it works in a company, and are your ideas correct, and does it actually work out?
And you won't know until you've actually put it to the test to prove it.
And if you can prove that, then you're kind of on to the next phase where you could sell it again. So yes, from a dev point of view, that's an avenue that you can take, definitely.
I've got one more on my list. I've just noticed another idea. Maybe you set up a community as a developer, like this school community or your school community, if you'd like to plug your school community. But say there's maybe you want to do some work with other developers or some training, and you need a case study for it. And you could say to that company, I will happily build your solution, but we will do it as part of a test case in this community. And so that could be another way, if they're happy to, if you don't want to share their data or anything, but if it's the right kind of project that they want building, maybe you could actually build it inside of a community, and then go on to the SaaS or the selling solution as well from there.
Yeah. I'd be interested to hear from Noah or Shubs to see whether they've got any comments or any other things to add to that.
Yeah, I think the equity conversation is an interesting one. When it comes to some of the clients we work with, a lot of the times it's difficult to, figure out how to play the long game. Obviously you can talk about monthly retainers, you can talk about signing a 12-month contract, there's many different ways you can approach it, but for them to really lock you in, it sounds like you were working on a monthly retainer with a client and they wanted to keep your skills, and they were quite, I think quite impressed with the way you probably approached the solution. And so they wanted to probably work more from a long-term perspective. So I think it just proves that you're technically very good at what you do.
But that's the thing, it's taking, with her, it's sort of taking her idea and kind of understanding it well enough, and then actually delivering on it, actually bringing it to life. That's exactly, they're almost the exact words that she said. It's not only have you got it, you brought it to life, and she can see it taking shape. With AI assisted development, you could do things very, very quickly. So a few Fridays ago, I sat down with her and we had a discussion about some things that she wanted to add in. And up to that point, she hadn't given me any training material for the training that she's doing with the stylists, which is one of the assistants that I've been working on. And she gave me some of that. She gave me some direction. I took the transcript from the meeting, ran all of that through, and what she was actually going to do is give me some feedback. And she was busy at the weekend. That was a Friday, and she was busy at the weekend. And it wasn't until the Monday that she got to go onto the product. And over the weekend, I had some free time over the weekend, managed to do 8 new features, add those into it. And when she got on there, all of her frameworks were there, all of her training was there, everything was there. And all of a sudden, it's just, there's 20 more screens and far more information, and it's all her stuff. It's not, I've not created it from something on the internet or anything. It's her frameworks. It's what she's given me. And it was just that realization. Wait a minute, there's something I can do. I've done it recently as well. We're actually paring it down, and realizing that a junior person is going to want less information. So she's got going through and saying, right, okay, this is the information that we need to give them. And she'd give me that as feedback, and within a day I've created the screen for that, so that it's really pared down. All of the other stuff is still there. It's all happening in the background. We can add it in, but we've got something that we can.
It sounds like you're exceeding expectations there, which is the key. Shubs, you put your hand up.
Yeah, 100%. Great conversation, and I thought I would just give my 2 cents as well. And I think it'd be nice to sort of like roll back a little bit to kind of fit in how the different, for at least how I see the different tiers, and how are we sort of breaking the problem down, like the whole. I mean, I've been a contractor for many years. I run my own agency, Align AI Solutions, and now Mike, we're working together on a project as well. So obviously we have built a bit of a structure between us to see how we can work together. What you bring to the table, what I bring to the table as a developer. For reference, how I see the equity side and everything, how I see the whole structure is through the problem and vendor awareness, how we break things down. So like, there's a lot of businesses out there that are not super problem aware, or they are problem aware. So that is sort of on the left side of the spectrum, but they're not quite solution aware, they're not quite vendor aware. Whereas some companies, so like as a contractor, I can talk about those big enterprise companies that would they are super problem aware. They understand what solution they are trying to build because they've done the BA work, the business analysis work. They've understood what requirements they are building for, and what kind of solutions. So at what point should someone bring a technical founder? What level someone should bring a developer? It's understanding that spectrum between problem awareness and then vendor awareness, and it's pretty much on a ladder or left to right axes, and so how me and Mike are working together, he's already worked with with the business that we're working with, where he's done a lot of the scoping work, the designing work, and he's collected that information. He's
And convince
also
them that
plugged
they need AI, which is a big part of it.
again.
And convince them in the first place that the AI would be beneficial.
That's what I was
to them.
getting to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's I'm gonna chime that in. But
Yeah.
he's basically sold them on the dream of, okay, what, like, talking about Alex Emozi, whereabouts in that dream, where's the dream outcome, and what's the sort of time, delay, and effort. He's mentioned that, right, this is where you could be with X systems, but then he needs to pair up with a developer, and he's worked with me, so where he's sold them on the problem, he's also sold them on the solution as well, to a certain extent, working together with myself, and then he's found a vendor, which is I'm the vendor. So it's working on that spectrum, how much someone can really charge. And I find that the more problem aware someone is and more solution aware, and they're in the market to look for a vendor, the less the vendor could charge. Whereas as a vendor, if you go in and you speak to the business that you have a problem, this is the solution that we can bring to your problem, and this is this is the vendor. I think you can charge a lot more as a developer, because you're making someone aware of the problem in itself. And I find that, like, that's how I'm also working as a developer, is I'm working a little bit with people that are somewhat problem aware, but they don't know what the solution is, they don't know what the vendor is. But I'm also working with companies that have already tried out the problem, they've already tried to build something themselves. And I think that's with AI, right? We're in this interesting space where the moat is kind of slowing down, and you're able to we're building these tools that are empowering a lot of these business owners that have the ability to build that prototype, that MVP themselves initially, and then once they reach a point where they have to scale, they have to lean on a developer. And I think from an equity perspective, at least, if someone has already done that work initially, and then they can show a proof of concept and show that they have the vision built up, they probably even have the traction in the business, or if it's a product, if they've built up the track within the market to say, we've got these early test users that are willing to either put their money or use the product, or if the product or service is providing some solution, then doing a rev share towards that product by selling that dream, I think that's really good. But then if the business has a sort of patchy understanding of what the product or service is providing value towards, then I think initially working towards more of a ongoing basis helps, because then you're working out those kinks initially. So from the sounds of it, Simon, you've already worked out, your customer already has a problem and a somewhat of a solution awareness, but you and you did this feasibility analysis with them.
Yeah. I mean, it's she's already pretty aware, and she already knows what she's after, and really what it was she's her. I would say in the last maybe 6 months, her question has changed. So initially, about 6 months ago, I want to do X and I don't know how to do it. I'm going to need this person, I'm going to need these people, I'm going to need these people. And she was really kind of, how do I make this happen? And really, since then, I mean, she's talking to various people. So she's got marketing people, she's got people that deal with cold outreach and websites and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of kind of avenues that she's taking, but then this whole sort of technology piece is a key part of her vision of what she wants to do, and it's really kind of taking that and then being a huge enabler for that part. And now she's kind of completely rethought what she needs to put in place in order to actually get to where she wants to get, because the people that she's kind of put in place, or she's made contact with over the last few months, have kind of really kind of enabled her vision to kind of come into place. So
Can I?
it is really working with somebody to understand, right, what are they going for, and then kind of trusting in the vision. I trust in the vision that she's got, and I really, I'm behind the vision that she's got. And I think it's a great thing to do, and that's part of kind of my willingness to kind of go, well, okay, I can see where this is potentially going. So, and I don't think there's any reason that it shouldn't go that way. So, I'm willing to bet more on it than and take more of my.
And you can
I mean,
also-
talk about sweat equity. It's a little bit of sweat equity, and you do have to be careful about. Actually, we didn't talk about that, but there is an element of fair market value. Again, you have to be careful about how you're kind of treating yourself in terms of what you're doing, because from a tax point of view in your business, even if you're not getting an income on it, it's still an income. You're still potentially you could still be taxed for it, even if once you kind of get into a point where you kind of got an equity in a business.
How would
so
that?
you
How would
do
you pay
need to
that
think.
tax? Would that come out of your addition of a profits? Just out of interest, because so you've got benefit in kind, so to speak. I guess they would just that would be your tax. They would tax you on
So
that
in
and you'd have
effect, so if you took it that, so let's say that you took it that, okay, this was whatever it was, and it was 10% of the business. So you're evaluating the business at a certain point. So let's say it was 100,000, and you're evaluating the business at $1 million. You've got 100,000. So in that tax year, you've made 100,000. Even if you haven't actually paid for it, you need to pay the tax on the 100,000.
Then you have to pay your capital gains on that 100,000.
So, I'm not sure whether it's capital. It might be capital gains or it might be income.
Income. But what if you don't have the money to cover that?
Then
in your profits,
maybe it's not the right thing to do.
So that's really.
But it's got to
really get you into a lot of trouble, because you're doing like the bartering. So I will do development for you, and you do accountancy services for me. And let's just say the accountancy service is actually very valuable, and then it's for tax purposes. It's determined that was actually of the value of this much, but you haven't made enough profit to cover that tax in that tax year. Then you're a bit scuppered.
I mean, the good thing about that is if you're dealing with an accountant, then hopefully they'll work out how to deal with it to cover that. But I mean, that's what everything's got a consequence, and you need to understand the consequence, and you need to understand all of the implications involved with it.
Yes.
Because if you don't understand them, then you could get into something which actually, I mean, what if you were, let's take that £1 million example and the 100,000, and you haven't got 20,000 tax, or whether it's 22 now, or whatever it is, since the budget. But you haven't got that money, and let's say it's due next month and you've done it this month. If you've done that, is that do you immediately go bankrupt?
Well, you ring up HMRC and get a payment plan, don't you, and pay some interest on it.
Well, yeah. So the thing is, it's timing. It's I do think from a point of view, from an accounting point of view, and from a legal point of view, before you do some of this, you need to get some advice on whether it's the right thing to do, and how to structure it and how to do things. I mean, we haven't talked about where to incorporate, if you incorporate in something, the legal ramifications of it. Like I said before,
too much depth. But it's right to bring it up. But yeah, it's obviously a lot to look into in whichever avenue you go down.
Quick one. So obviously we're talking about the different the different areas of accounting and legal. Where are you seeing this? Are you seeing this from when a business grows from 0 to 1, let's say, we're looking at startups, or we're looking at a business that's already got cash flow coming in, but then they want to be able to open up another arm, and they want a developer so that they can, scale. So you're almost going from 0 to 1 because you don't know what you're doing initially, and then you're putting the initial systems together, um, and but then once you've gone from 0 to 1, which is the hardest part, you then scaling from 1 to 2, and then you're scaling further
Yeah.
through 2 to 3.
Yeah.
So I think initially, that from that 0 to 1, there's going to be, that initial setup phase, the planning phase, and then building that market traction and understanding, what would be the ROI towards going from 0 to 1. And then I think that initial step of having a founder, or having that technical person that understands and wears different hats, will be quite important. But then moving forward from that, going from 1 to 10x, for example, that's when you start looking at the ROI side of things, and if I put, £1,000 towards this, how much potentially am I going to get from that?
Yeah.
So where are you guys seeing
So
what
the difference
exactly?
with what? Yeah, I know. I think the difference with what we're talking about here is, you're not talking about a business. You're talking a bit about a business that's quite well established, and she just wants to do another part to it, and it's under an umbrella.
Just like a
So
10 to 20,
about
basically.
structure of a business is quite, that's sort of another side of things.
It's
And
mature
you can
already. You're
you
scaling
can
up.
transfer money between businesses if they're structured in the right way.
Right.
So basically, her businesses are feeding this. So it's not like, so in effect, kind of, we've got investment from her businesses.
Right.
So there's a little bit of capital that can be put into it to get it rolling. So you're not talking about, I need to provide capital, or, it's only time, or whatever. There is something there. Depending on what you're talking about in a business, and depending on where you are, I take your point. If you're talking about a roofing company, or plumbers, or something, a big, not like a one-man band. They've got 30 employees or something like that. Decent size. Are they want to kind of give you equity in the company or something like that to do this? Probably not. So it's like, I suppose it's kind of a unique situation of where I am with this client. But it is, there, as we said, there's a range of options here that we've covered today, and you shouldn't just think, well, I need to pay, if it's a 10 grand project, do I need to pay 10,000 or 20,000 or whatever it is, or are there other ways of doing it whereby, I'm not, because obviously as a developer, you don't want to bankrupt your client. you want to work with them to get them a result. And
well, right. So I think you won't,
yeah,
like, if a developer, if I go in and understand that, this, okay, right, this is your cash flow at the moment, and this is something that you're budgeting towards. It's always going to be that initial R&D budget, right, where you've not got the systems in place, and then you're assigning a allocated amount of cash flow towards this R&D, in the hope that you're gonna be getting the ROI in the long term. And then, given that that's a decision for the business to make, and then working out, how much of that problem are you aware of, and how much are you working with the developer to solve it from a feasibility point of view. I think that is a good frame of mind to think about when moving forward, because yes, there are ways to, just throw your money. Like, I mean, I've worked for bigger companies and enterprises where they tend to measure a project in comparison to man hours. They will think this is a project that will require X amount of hours, so then they'll get X amount of developers. And I've seen a mismatch all the time, because they're trying to scale or trying to build a new project. I've worked on greenfield projects, from working in the likes of NHS and with IBM, I've seen these greenfield projects where the structure matters. How much of the initial life cycle are you owning? So if a business owner can own and understand the requirements of this new venture, then be able to do somewhat of a process map and actually do the analysis piece,
Yep.
then then they just need to hand over the technical part of that work because they've already measured that out. But then, how much of that work are you really doing? So I think there's a bit of an underlying process that you go with the developer to do the initial piece of feasibility, and then move on towards the scaling would be second, because now you know what's working. You've somewhat matured that process and that service, and then you've moved on to the scaling part, and you've said, right, at a miniature level of the MVP, you're working out that pilot, and you're working out the MVP, and this is at a miniature level, it is providing the results that we expect, that we hypothesized, and then moving forward, then you start working out the allocated, and you increase the allocated budget because you've worked out what the ROI is. I think that is also, like, that's the frame of mind I'm also thinking as well, like when it comes to getting the right technical person with that level of business balance and also technical know-how as well. Because in where the type of landscape we're in right now, a lot of people can do the AI builds initially, but then they want to be able to bring in the developers. So how much of that initial testing are they doing, and then how much of that work are they giving up to someone else?
We're a little over time, so I want to respect people's time. But before, I just wanted to, if anyone wants to follow up on Shubs's point there, and Simon, you gave a really good summary actually just before on the point. So, but I don't want to go too far over. But yeah, sorry. Go ahead. Looked like you had a follow up there, Simon, on Shubs's point. I didn't want to cut him off.
No, I totally agree with it. It's you did say something that made me think about something, and I can't remember what it was. So maybe that's another time.
Oh, okay. So unless anybody's got any burning things that they want to add, I think this has been fantastic. I've learned a lot as well. We've gone through tons of ideas, and Simon, you've gone into a lot of depth about a few of them, which is really, really interesting. And some of it might save our hinds at some point with the benefit in kind stuff. That's a really good thing to point out. So I really appreciate you all coming on as well and contributing. So thanks for your time.
And I might really appreciate the opportunity. And you, the other guys, it's great to have you here and for you to contribute as well. I've been wanting to talk to you all as well. So, it's really good to get us all on a call together.
I'd be happy to do it again, of course. Simon, you've got a school community, so if you wanted to do a reciprocal, but that'd be great.
I'm sure we can arrange something. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Excellent.
Thanks a lot, guys, and we'll call it a day there. But yeah,
Thanks,
again,
everyone.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for watching this segment from my school community. If you want the full hour, join the AI for Business school community, where we meet every week and have showcases of how developers are implementing AI solutions for businesses, helping you to discover new ways to automate and innovate in your business processes. Head over to learnmanagementonline.com to find out more.